Ethan Carter stepped into the expansive foyer of his lavish penthouse, the opulence surrounding him a stark reminder of the life he had built over the years. The walls were adorned with art from renowned artists, and the floors gleamed with polished marble. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, where the twinkling lights mirrored the stars above. Yet, as he surveyed his kingdom, a familiar sense of emptiness gnawed at him. He kicked off his designer shoes and padded across the cool marble floor to the living room, where a plush, oversized sofa awaited him. As he sank into its depths, he felt a wave of introspection wash over him. Despite the wealth that enveloped him, the countless zeros in his bank account, and the luxury cars parked in his garage, Ethan felt a profound disconnect from the world around him. His success had come at a cost, leaving him surrounded by people who praised his achievements, yet rarely saw him for who he truly was. It was as if he wore a mask, and behind that mask lay a man yearning for genuine connection. "What's the point of it all?" he muttered to himself, staring at the flickering city lights. The question lingered in the air, unanswered and heavy. He had built an empire, but in doing so, he had become a prisoner of his own making, trapped by expectations and the superficiality that often accompanied wealth. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, as an idea began to take shape in his mind. What if he could strip away the layers of his identity and step into the shoes of an average person? What if he could see the world not as a billionaire, but as someone who struggled to make ends meet? It was a radical thought, one that both excited and terrified him. He grabbed his phone and opened a note-taking app, jotting down his plan. "Disguise myself as an average Joe," he typed, his brow furrowing in concentration. "Visit a luxury car dealership. Test the customer service. See how they treat someone who isn't wearing a tailored suit." The more he considered it, the more he felt a sense of purpose igniting within him. This experiment could be the key to understanding the human connections he so desperately craved. He envisioned the reactions of the sales staff. Would they treat him with disdain simply because of his appearance? Or could he find someone who would look beyond the surface? After deciding on his course of action, he spent the rest of the evening rummaging through the back of his closet. He found an old pair of faded jeans, a couple of threadbare t-shirts, and a worn-out jacket that had seen better days. As he laid the clothes out on his bed, he felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and nervousness. This was more than just a wardrobe change. It was a transformation of identity. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, a sense of anticipation bubbling within him. He dressed in his carefully selected attire, each thread representing a departure from his everyday life. Standing in front of the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back wore the guise of someone who belonged to a different world, one that was far removed from the wealth and privilege he was accustomed to. He decided to drive his beat-up sedan, a car he had kept around for a rainy day but had barely touched in years. The engine sputtered as he turned the key, a reminder of the life he was about to step into. As he navigated through the bustling streets, he felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. He was about to immerse himself in a reality that was foreign, yet strangely enticing. Arriving at the luxury car dealership, Ethan parked his car at the far end of the lot, away from the gleaming high-end vehicles that adorned the entrance. As he stepped out, he took a moment to absorb the opulence that surrounded him. The dealership was a palace of glass and chrome, showcasing the latest models that glistened under the bright lights, each one a symbol of status and wealth. Ethan hesitated for a moment, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. What would happen when he walked through those doors? Would he be treated with disdain, or would someone see through his ruse? He took a deep breath and squared his shoulders, reminding himself of the purpose behind his visit. This was an experiment, a chance to uncover the truths hidden beneath the surface. As he stepped inside, the atmosphere enveloped him like a warm embrace, yet it was laced with an undercurrent of exclusivity. The air was thick with the scent of leather and polish, and the soft hum of conversation mixed with the occasional rev of an engine. Ethan glanced around, taking in the sleek lines of the luxury cars on display, each one more magnificent than the last. But as he stood there, a sense of isolation washed over him. The sales staff, clad in tailored suits that matched the luxury of their surroundings, seemed to glide past him, their attention captured by a wealthy-looking couple who had just entered. Ethan watched as the couple laughed and chatted animatedly, their designer clothes and polished demeanor drawing the sales team like moths to a flame. "Can I help you?" one of the salesmen asked the couple, his voice dripping with enthusiasm. Ethan stood a few feet away, feeling invisible. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, a pang of disappointment settling in his stomach. No one had acknowledged him, not even a passing glance. The indifference of the sales staff stung more than he had anticipated. "Look at that one," the woman exclaimed, pointing to a sleek sports car. "It's stunning." "Yes, madam, it's one of our latest models," the salesman replied, his tone reverent as he showcased the car's features. "You'll find it has exceptional performance." Ethan felt the sting of their dismissive attitudes, the weight of judgment pressing down on him. He had hoped for a more welcoming environment, one where he could engage with the staff and gauge their reactions. Instead, he was met with apathy, his presence overshadowed by the allure of wealth. After a few moments of standing in the shadows, he shifted his gaze to the gleaming cars, trying to immerse himself in the experience despite the growing sense of alienation. Yet, the excitement he had felt earlier began to fade, replaced by a sense of disillusionment. This was not what he had envisioned. "Excuse me, sir." A voice suddenly broke through his thoughts. Ethan turned to see a young salesman approaching, a smile plastered on his face. Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this would be the interaction that would change everything. But as the salesman drew closer, his expression shifted. The smile faded slightly as he took in Ethan's worn attire. The enthusiasm vanished, replaced by a faint hint of condescension. "Are you looking for something specific today?" he asked, his tone cool and distant. Ethan opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, suddenly acutely aware of how he must appear to the salesman. He could feel the walls closing in, the weight of his disguise feeling heavier than ever. "Just browsing," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. The salesman nodded dismissively, his gaze drifting past Ethan to the couple who were now seated in a luxury car, laughter echoing in the air. With a final glance, he turned away, leaving Ethan standing alone once more. As the sting of their indifference settled in his chest, Ethan realized that he had underestimated the depth of his own experiment. This was about more than just observing customer service. It was about confronting the very biases that defined human interaction. He felt a blend of frustration and resolve bubbling within him. If he could not be heard or seen, then perhaps he needed to dig deeper into this world of wealth and privilege, to uncover the truths hidden beneath the surface. With a renewed sense of determination, Ethan stood tall, ready to navigate the intricacies of this experiment. He would not allow himself to be defined by the judgments of others. Instead, he would seek understanding, connection, and perhaps a path toward empathy that transcended the superficial barriers of wealth and appearance. Little did he know, this journey would lead to revelations that would challenge not only his perspectives but those of everyone around him. Ethan wandered through the luxurious car dealership, the gleam of polished chrome and glossy paint reflecting in his eyes. The air smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne, a stark contrast to the worn-out clothes he wore. He could hear the distant hum of conversation, punctuated by laughter and the occasional sound of engines starting outside. As he moved deeper into the showroom, he overheard snippets of a conversation among the sales staff that made him pause. "Can you believe the commission on that McLaren?" one of the salesmen exclaimed, a smug grin plastered on his face. "I'm telling you, it's all about appearances. If you look the part, the clients come running." Ethan's brow furrowed as he listened. The brazen confidence in the salesman's tone struck a nerve. He leaned against a sleek, silver sports car, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers as he absorbed the implications of their words. The superficiality in their judgments began to lay bare the underlying prejudices that governed their interactions. They were not merely selling cars. They were selling status, prestige, and a sense of belonging that was tightly woven into the fabric of wealth. "Yeah, I don't know why we even bother with the ones who don't look like they can afford it," another salesman chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. "They just waste our time. Look at that guy over there," he said, gesturing discreetly in Ethan's direction. "He's just taking up space." Ethan felt the sting of their words, a reminder of the very reason he had chosen to disguise himself. He had wanted to see how the other half lived, but now, standing there in his ragged clothing, he also felt the weight of their disdain. He took a deep breath, trying to quell the frustration bubbling inside him. The disconnect between their perception and reality was stark, and he found himself longing for authentic human connection, something he realized he had been missing in his own life. Just then, a young salesman with a bright smile approached Ethan. "Hey there, looking for something special today?" Jake asked, his enthusiasm palpable. But as his eyes scanned Ethan's attire, the smile faltered. The eagerness in Jake's voice began to dissipate, replaced by a half-hearted tone. If you're looking for something more budget-friendly, I can show you the used cars over there." Ethan felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. "Actually, I was hoping to see some of the new models," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. The glimmer of excitement in his eyes didn't go unnoticed, but Jake quickly glanced back at the wealthy couple who had just entered the showroom, their designer outfits and confident demeanor drawing all of his attention. "Right, but I think you'd be more comfortable with something in your price range," Jake said dismissively, turning away and leaving Ethan standing alone once more. The feeling of invisibility washed over him, and for a brief moment, he questioned the validity of his experiment. He had expected a challenge, perhaps some resistance, but the level of disregard he experienced was disheartening. Ethan took a moment to gather himself. He didn't want to give up. He was determined to understand this world better. He glanced around, observing the interactions between the sales staff and the affluent customers. It was clear that wealth brought with it a certain level of respect and attention, while those who appeared less fortunate were relegated to the sidelines, ignored and devalued. Frustrated but resolute, Ethan made up his mind. He would return the next day. He needed to gather more insights into this culture, to witness firsthand how the staff engaged with customers. He wanted to see if anyone would break the mold and treat him as an individual rather than a reflection of his appearance. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the dealership earlier than the day before. He took a moment to observe the scene before he stepped inside. The sun streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow over the shiny cars. He could see the sales team huddled together, exchanging banter as they prepared for the day. Their camaraderie seemed genuine, but Ethan knew that beneath it lay layers of competition and judgment. As he entered, he made a conscious effort to maintain a low profile, while still being aware of everything happening around him. He watched as a wealthy couple walked in, their presence instantly commanding attention from the sales staff. They were greeted with smiles and flattery, the salesmen practically tripping over themselves to assist them. Ethan felt a pang of envy mixed with frustration at how effortlessly they were welcomed. "Can I interest you in a test drive, Mr. Thompson?" one of the salesmen asked, the insincerity in his voice barely masked by the enthusiasm. "We just received the latest model, and I guarantee it's a real head-turner." Ethan shifted his focus, trying to catch the attention of a nearby salesman. He raised his hand slightly, hoping to signal his interest, but was met with a glance that quickly shifted back to the wealthy couple. It was as if he were invisible again. The realization hit him hard. The rift between status and worth was not just a superficial gap. It was a chasm that separated people based on their appearances and financial status. Feeling a mix of determination and sadness, Ethan decided he would come back again. This time, he would be more prepared. He would observe the dynamics at play, not just in terms of the sales transactions, but also in how human interactions unfolded within this world of wealth and privilege. He wanted to see if he could uncover the truth behind the facades, to bring to light the biases that dictated behavior in such settings. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of a young woman sitting at the reception desk, her face illuminated by a warm smile. Sarah, the receptionist, had been friendly to every customer who walked in, her demeanor genuine and welcoming. He admired the way she effortlessly made people feel valued, regardless of their appearance. He could see that her kindness shone through in the way she engaged with others, and it was a stark contrast to the sales staff's often superficial interactions. "Have a great day," she called out to him as he stepped out, her voice bright and cheerful. Ethan turned back, surprised by her warmth. "You too," he replied, a smile creeping onto his face. In that moment, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe not everyone in this dealership was wrapped up in the judgments of wealth and status. As he walked to his car, he contemplated the lessons he was learning through this experience. The struggle for recognition and validation was universal, transcending socioeconomic boundaries. He realized that true worth was not defined by material possessions, but by the authenticity of human connections. And with that thought, he made a promise to himself. He would return the next day, ready to explore the complexities of this world and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to bridge the gap between appearances and reality. Ethan Carter stepped into the luxury car dealership once more, the sun casting a golden hue over the polished showrooms. Today, he had arrived earlier, determined to observe the interactions between the sales team and their clients. He leaned against a sleek glass wall, pretending to inspect a nearby vehicle while discreetly watching the sales staff bustle about. The atmosphere buzzed with an unspoken hierarchy, an invisible line drawn between those perceived as wealthy and those who were not. He noticed a middle-aged couple entering the dealership, their designer clothes and confident demeanor instantly drawing the attention of the salespeople. Jake, the eager young salesman who had previously brushed Ethan off, was quick to approach them, his smile wide and inviting. "Welcome to Lux Motors. Can I assist you in finding your dream car today?" he offered, his tone dripping with enthusiasm. Ethan felt a pang of frustration at the sight. The couple responded with equal enthusiasm, and it was clear that Jake was already mentally calculating his commission. Meanwhile, Ethan remained in the shadows, invisible and ignored. As he shifted his focus, he watched another salesperson, a middle-aged woman with a sharp bob haircut, fawn over a wealthy gentleman in an expensive suit. The contrast was stark. The way they spoke, the way they laughed, and the way the sales team catered to their every whim was a performance he had seen many times before. Just then, a soft voice broke through his thoughts. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" It was Sarah, the receptionist from the day before. She stood behind her desk, her warm smile reaching her eyes, radiating a genuine kindness that seemed out of place in the dealership's cutthroat environment. Ethan straightened up, momentarily caught off guard. "I'm just browsing, thank you," he replied, trying to sound casual. "Of course. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. We have some amazing new models in stock," Sarah said, her enthusiasm genuine. "I particularly love the new electric line, very eco-friendly and stylish." Ethan found himself smiling back at her. "Yeah, I've heard good things about those. They're quite impressive." He felt an unexpected warmth at her engagement, a stark contrast to the cold indifference he had experienced from the sales team earlier. "Are you in the market for a car?" Sarah inquired, her curiosity evident. "You know, we have a great selection here, from sporty coupes to family-friendly SUVs." "Just curious for now," he replied, appreciating her approach. "I'm more interested in how things work around here." "Ah, well, you'll find that it's a bit of a game," she chuckled lightly. "Sometimes it feels like the more money you have, the better treatment you receive. But not everyone sees it that way, thankfully." Ethan's heart warmed at her remark. "You seem to have a good perspective on it. Not everyone in this business recognizes that, do they?" "No, they don't," Sarah said, her smile fading slightly as she glanced toward the bustling sales floor. "But I try to treat everyone equally. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their bank account." Her words struck a chord within Ethan. He realized that despite his wealth, he hadn't always extended that respect to others, especially those who didn't fit the mold of success as society defined it. He admired her for standing out in a place where conformity was the norm. As they continued to chat, Ethan felt a sense of camaraderie forming. Their conversation flowed easily, and he found himself sharing little snippets about his life, albeit without revealing his true identity. He talked about his childhood, the lessons he learned about kindness, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Sarah listened intently, her eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. Just as he was about to ask her more about her role at the dealership, he noticed Jake approaching from the corner of his eye, his posture rigid and his expression condescending. "Hey there, Sarah," Jake called out, his voice dripping with faux friendliness. "Who have you got chatting with you? Another tire kicker?" Ethan bristled at the term, a wave of anger washing over him. He could feel his heart race as he tried to compose himself. The condescension in Jake's tone was palpable, and he couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and disgust for the young salesman. "Actually, Jake, this is a potential customer," Sarah replied, her voice unwavering. "He has a great interest in our vehicles, and was just asking about our lineup. Jake raised an eyebrow, scanning Ethan from head to toe, his gaze dripping with judgment. "Sure he is," he said, a mocking lilt in his voice. "I mean, just look at his clothes. What's next? You gonna try to sell him a used bicycle?" Ethan felt his fists clench at his sides, anger boiling beneath the surface. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He didn't want to stoop to Jake's level, yet the blatant disrespect was like a slap in the face. "Jake, that's not appropriate," Sarah interjected, her tone firm. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. You should know that by now." Jake scoffed, a smirk dancing on his lips. "Respect is earned, Sarah. And let's be real, he doesn't look like he's got 2 pennies to rub together." Ethan felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment, but he also felt a flicker of admiration for Sarah's defense. Here was someone who stood up against the very biases that had frustrated him throughout his visit. "Maybe you should take a lesson from her," Ethan finally said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. "It's not about the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's about how you treat people." Jake's expression shifted, surprise flashing in his eyes as he registered Ethan's words. "Who do you think you are?" he shot back, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "I'm someone who believes that respect isn't determined by appearances," Ethan replied, his heart pounding. "And that kindness should be the first impression, not a privilege given only to those with money." The tension in the air thickened as Jake opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah cut him off. "Ethan is right, Jake. You need to rethink how you approach customers. This is not how we build a positive reputation or foster genuine connections." Ethan felt a surge of gratitude towards Sarah for standing up for him, for recognizing the dignity of every individual. He could see the gears turning in Jake's mind, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. As Ethan turned to walk away, he couldn't shake the feeling of anger towards Jake, but also a sense of hope. Sarah's kindness and unwavering support reminded him that not everyone saw the world through a lens of wealth and status. He had come here to observe and learn, but now he felt a deeper connection to the people around him, one that transcended the facades they presented. He glanced back at Sarah, who was watching him with an encouraging smile. "Thank you for standing up for me," he said sincerely. "It's refreshing to meet someone who values kindness over appearances." "Anytime," she replied, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "We all have our struggles, and it's important to support one another, no matter where we come from." As Ethan continued to wander through the showroom, his thoughts raced. He felt a sense of clarity wash over him, a realization that his experiment was leading him to unexpected lessons. He had come to explore the superficiality of wealth, but what he discovered was a profound understanding of human dignity, respect, and the connections that could be forged in a world so often defined by material possessions. The luxury cars around him glimmered like trophies, but they paled in comparison to the genuine interactions unfolding within the dealership. As Jake continued to hover nearby, Ethan resolved to not let the young salesman's ignorance overshadow the kindness he had experienced from Sarah. He knew he needed to confront the prejudices he witnessed, not only for himself, but for those who felt the weight of judgment based on their appearance. As Ethan stood in the luxurious car dealership, the hum of engines and the polished surfaces of the showroom seemed to envelop him in an atmosphere of wealth and privilege. He had just been confronted by Jake, the young salesman whose condescension had stung him more than he cared to admit. The air was thick with unspoken words and suppressed emotions, and Ethan felt the weight of his disguise pressing down on him. He knew he had to address Jake's behavior, but he hesitated, unsure of how to articulate his frustration without revealing his true identity. Just as he summoned the courage to speak, Sarah, the kind receptionist with a warm smile, appeared beside him, her presence a calming balm amidst the tension. "Hey, Ethan," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "Are you okay?" Ethan sighed, feeling a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability. "I'm fine, just frustrated." Without missing a beat, Sarah turned her gaze toward Jake, who was leaning casually against a luxury SUV, chatting with another colleague. "You don't have to let him get to you," she said, her tone laced with determination. "Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their status or what they wear. It's disheartening to see people treated like that." Ethan was taken aback by her fierce defense. It was a stark contrast to the indifference that had permeated the dealership since his arrival. You really believe that? He asked, intrigued. Absolutely, Sarah replied, crossing her arms defiantly. I've seen too many people judged by their appearances. It's like they forget we're all human at the end of the day. You never know someone's story just by looking at them. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. Her words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of hope in his heart. He had come here to observe, to learn how people interacted with one another based on superficial judgments. But Sarah's empathy reminded him of the deeper connections he had been missing in his life. Perhaps this experiment could lead to something more profound than he had initially anticipated. As they spoke, Ethan noticed Jake glancing over at them, a hint of mockery in his eyes as he leaned closer to his colleague. Look at that guy. You'd think he's here to buy a car, but he probably can't even afford the gas to get here. Jake sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Ethan's stomach twisted at the sound of Jake's words. It was one thing to be treated poorly. It was another to be openly ridiculed. Sarah's expression darkened, and she stepped forward, her voice steady and unwavering. That's not fair, Jake. Everyone has a right to be treated with dignity. Just because someone doesn't fit your idea of a typical customer doesn't mean they're any less deserving of respect. Jake rolled his eyes, clearly unfazed by her stance. You're too soft, Sarah. This is a business. We cater to people who can actually buy cars, not to charity cases. Ethan felt a surge of anger rise within him, but before he could respond, Sarah turned back to him, her eyes filled with sincerity. I'm sorry you have to hear that. Don't let him get to you. Some people just don't understand. Thank you, Ethan replied, grateful for her support. He could sense the genuine concern in her voice, and it struck a chord within him. Here was someone who saw beyond the surface, someone who recognized the inherent value in every individual. Why do you work here? Ethan asked, curious to know more about her. You seem different from the others. Sarah smiled softly, her demeanor shifting as she spoke. I love cars, and I enjoy helping people find what they're looking for. But more than that, I believe it's important to treat everyone as equals. I've seen how being kind can change someone's day, or even their life. But you must get frustrated, he said, glancing back at Jake, who was now animatedly chatting with a wealthy couple across the showroom. Working with people who don't share your values. Of course, it can be tough, she admitted, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. But I try to focus on the positive. I've had customers come in who were having the worst day, and if I can make even a small difference, then it's worth it. We all need kindness, especially in a place like this. Ethan felt a wave of admiration wash over him. Sarah's passion and commitment to kindness were refreshing in a world dominated by superficiality. He wondered if he could leverage his privilege to help people like her, those who truly cared about making a difference. Perhaps this experiment could evolve into something more significant. As the day wore on, Ethan found himself lingering at the dealership longer than he had intended. He watched as Sarah interacted with customers, her warmth and genuine enthusiasm shining through every conversation. He noted how she took the time to listen, how she remembered small details about previous customers, and how her kindness transformed their experience. It was a stark contrast to the sharp, transactional nature of Jake's interactions. Ethan's heart swelled with admiration, and he felt a growing connection to Sarah. He wanted to help her, to support her in her efforts to create a more compassionate environment within the dealership. If only there was a way to bridge the gap between her values and the culture created by the sales team. As he stood lost in thought, he overheard Jake and his colleague again, their voices low but unmistakable. Can you believe that guy? If he had any sense, he'd know this isn't a place for him, Jake scoffed. People like him just don't belong in luxury. It's embarrassing. Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the anger well up inside him once more. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the catalyst that would push him to take action. He realized that the facade he had put on was not just a disguise. It was a mask that revealed the truth about how people were treated based on their appearance. He could no longer stand by and let it happen. Turning to Sarah, he took a deep breath. I think it's time for me to show them what real respect looks like. What do you mean? She asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. I want to confront them, he said, his voice steady. I want to show Jake and the others that kindness isn't a weakness, and that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Sarah's eyes widened, and she nodded slowly. I admire your courage. But just be careful. People can be defensive when their biases are challenged. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of determination wash over him. I appreciate your concern, Sarah. But I think it's time for a change, not just here, but in how we treat each other in general. As the day wrapped up, Ethan stood at the edge of the showroom, watching Jake and his colleague laugh together, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. He felt a profound sense of purpose rising within him. He would not let this moment pass by. He would confront the biases that plagued the dealership and, in turn, challenge the larger societal norms that allowed such judgments to persist. With each passing moment, the resolve in Ethan's heart solidified. He would reveal his true identity, not just to shock them, but to encourage a dialogue about respect and empathy. He thought of Sarah's kindness and how it had inspired him to act. This was no longer about a mere experiment. It was about creating a ripple effect of change, one that could extend far beyond these showroom walls. As he prepared to leave, Ethan took one last look at Sarah, who was still diligently helping a customer with a smile on her face, her spirit unbroken by the negativity surrounding her. He felt a surge of gratitude for her presence in this journey. This was not just about him. It was about everyone who had been dismissed or belittled because of their appearance. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, tomorrow will be different. Ethan Carter stepped back into the luxury car dealership, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and determination. Gone were the worn-out clothes that had masked his identity. Today, he wore a sharp, tailored suit that exuded confidence and success. The polished shoes he had chosen clicked against the marble floor as he walked through the entrance, drawing the attention of the sales staff. Jake, the young salesman who had dismissed him just days before, stood at the front desk with a smug smile plastered on his face. The moment Jake's eyes landed on Ethan, his expression morphed from arrogance to sheer disbelief. He stammered, fumbling with the paperwork in his hands as he tried to comprehend the transformation before him. "Ethan?" Jake blurted out, his voice a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Is that you? I didn't recognize you." Ethan's lips curled into a slight smile, but his eyes held a steely determination. "Yes, it's me, Jake. The same guy you brushed off just a couple of days ago." The dealership buzzed with activity, but in that moment, the surrounding noise faded into the background. Ethan could feel the eyes of the sales staff on him, their surprise palpable. He approached the sleek line of luxury cars, deliberately walking past Jake, who was still trying to collect himself. "Can I help you find a car today?" Jake finally managed to ask, his tone awkwardly cheerful, as if he could somehow erase their previous encounter. Ethan turned to face him, his demeanor calm but firm. "Actually, I'm here to share a lesson I learned during my last visit. But first, let me introduce myself properly." He extended his hand. "I'm Ethan Carter, owner of Carter Tech. I've been here a few times incognito, observing your customer service." The reception of his identity was instantaneous. The air thickened with tension, and the sales staff exchanged nervous glances. Jake's face turned a shade paler, the realization of his earlier disrespect hitting him like a ton of bricks. "I didn't know," he stammered, sweat forming at his brow. Ethan continued, addressing the entire team. "I came here dressed as an average man to see how I would be treated. I wanted to know if the luxury you sell comes with a sense of dignity and respect for all customers." The murmurs among the staff grew louder, and Ethan could see the discomfort etched on their faces. He glanced at Sarah, the kind receptionist who had treated him with warmth, and saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Ethan, I'm really sorry," Jake said, his bravado crumbling. "I didn't mean to disrespect you. It was just what, Jake?" Ethan interrupted, his voice steady but firm. "Just because I look different? That's the problem, isn't it? You judge me based on my appearance, and I'm afraid that's a reflection of a larger issue within this dealership." The room fell silent as Ethan's words sunk in. He could feel the weight of their scrutiny, a mix of shame and realization washing over the sales staff. Jake shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Let me tell you what I've learned," Ethan continued, his tone softening as he spoke. "Wealth doesn't define a person's value. I may have money, but that doesn't make me better than anyone else. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of the car they drive or the clothes they wear." He took a step closer to Jake, who was now visibly shaken. You missed an opportunity, Jake. You could have treated me like a potential customer, but instead, you looked right through me. Ethan, I see that now. I was wrong, Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm really sorry. Ethan nodded, contemplating the young salesman's sincerity. Apologies are a start, but actions speak louder than words. I hope this experience prompts some reflection among all of you. He turned to the rest of the staff, whose expressions ranged from guilt to contemplation. It's essential to remember that clients come in all shapes and sizes. We can't let our biases dictate how we treat others. You never know who someone might be. The atmosphere in the dealership shifted. Ethan could sense a collective understanding dawning among the sales team. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady and compassionate. Ethan, thank you for sharing this with us. It's a reminder we all needed. We should strive to create a welcoming environment for everyone. Exactly, Ethan replied, grateful for her support. A dealership isn't just about selling cars. It's about building relationships. Each interaction counts. Jake, still visibly shaken, looked Ethan in the eye. I want to do better. I really do. Can you give me a chance to prove it? Ethan studied him for a moment, weighing his options. I think everyone deserves a second chance, Jake. However, it's up to you to change your approach moving forward. I'll be watching. The young salesman nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within him. I won't let you down, Ethan. I mean it. As the conversation continued, Ethan felt a sense of purpose wash over him. He had not only revealed his true identity, but had also opened a dialogue about respect and empathy in a world often dominated by appearances. Let's work together to change this dealership's culture, Ethan proposed. I believe we can create an environment where every customer feels valued. The team murmured in agreement, and Ethan could sense a shift in their perceptions. They were beginning to understand that every interaction mattered, no matter how small. Thank you for this opportunity, Ethan, Sarah said, her eyes shining with gratitude. It's inspiring to see someone with your success care so deeply about this issue. Ethan smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest. I appreciate your kindness, Sarah. You've shown that empathy exists even in places where it's often overlooked. As they continued to discuss ways to enhance their customer service approach, Ethan felt a sense of hope for the dealership's future. He had entered the luxury car world as an observer, but he was leaving as a catalyst for change. In that moment, he realized that his journey had been about more than just testing the waters of customer service. It had been about fostering human connections and understanding the value of kindness. The lessons he had learned would linger well beyond the walls of the dealership, guiding him as he moved forward in both his personal and professional life. As Ethan walked toward the exit, he glanced back at the sales team, who were deep in conversation, discussing new strategies and ideas. He felt a surge of optimism. Perhaps, just perhaps, change was possible. And in that hope, he found a renewed sense of purpose, one that extended far beyond the confines of wealth and status. As Ethan stood in the luxurious showroom, the air thick with the scent of polished leather and freshly shined chrome, he felt a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. The sales team, still reeling from the shock of his revelation, fidgeted nervously as they awaited the arrival of the dealership's owner, a man known for his strict standards and no-nonsense attitude. Ethan's heart raced slightly as he glanced at Jake, whose face was a mask of confusion and regret. Moments later, the dealership's owner, Mr. Henderson, strode into the showroom with an air of authority. His tailored suit and commanding presence immediately captured the attention of the sales staff, who fell silent as he approached. Ethan stood tall, ready to face the consequences of his revelations, but also eager to advocate for change. Ethan Carter, Mr. Henderson began, his voice deep and steady. I've been informed of the incident that occurred here the other day. I must say, I'm disappointed in the conduct of my team, especially you, Jake. He turned sharply to the young salesman, whose gaze dropped to the polished floor, unable to meet his boss's eyes. I've always emphasized that every customer deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or financial status, Mr. Henderson continued, his tone stern. Your behavior not only reflects poorly on yourself, but also on this entire dealership. Ethan watched as Jake's face flushed with shame. The weight of Mr. Henderson's words hung heavily in the air, and Ethan could sense the tension building. The other staff members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to react to the unfolding drama. "I'm sure you understand the importance of creating a welcoming atmosphere for all clients," Mr. Henderson said, his gaze piercing into Jake's. "Effective immediately, I will be demoting you for your lack of professionalism. You will be reassigned to the service department until I feel you are ready to rejoin the sales team." Gasps echoed through the room, and Ethan felt a pang of sympathy for Jake. He remembered his own journey, the moments of insecurity, the mistakes made in the pursuit of success. "Mr. Henderson," Ethan interjected, his voice calm but firm, "if I may." Mr. Henderson turned to Ethan, surprise flickering across his features. "What do you mean?" "I believe in accountability, but I also believe in second chances," Ethan said, stepping forward. "Jake made a mistake, yes, but he can learn and grow from this experience. Instead of demoting him, why not offer him mentorship? We were all young and inexperienced at one point. I see potential in him." Jake looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You would do that for me?" Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. "I think you have the capacity to change, Jake. It's important to recognize that we all have room for growth. I'm willing to share my journey with you, what I've learned about empathy, humility, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity." Mr. Henderson's expression softened slightly as he considered Ethan's words. The tension in the room eased, and the sales staff exchanged glances filled with curiosity and a hint of hope. "That's a very generous offer, Ethan," he said, his tone shifting. "But what guarantees do we have that this will lead to a positive outcome?" "Change doesn't happen overnight," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "But with the right guidance, I believe Jake can embody the values this dealership stands for. It's about building relationships, not just closing deals. If he's willing to learn, I'll be here to support him." The owner looked at Jake, who was visibly shaken but hopeful. "What do you think, Jake? Are you willing to commit to this opportunity?" Jake took a deep breath, his heart racing as he met Ethan's gaze. "Yes, I want to learn. I'm sorry for how I treated you, Ethan. I was wrong." Ethan smiled, appreciating the young man's sincerity. "It's okay, Jake. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to recognize them and strive to do better." Mr. Henderson nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Very well. I'll give you one more chance, Jake. But understand this. If I see any further lapses in judgment, it will be the end of your career here." "Thank you, sir," Jake replied, his voice filled with relief. "I won't let you down." As Mr. Henderson walked away, Ethan turned to Jake, who was still processing the turn of events. "You know, this is just the beginning," Ethan said, placing a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. "We'll work together, and I'll help you find a better way to connect with customers. It's about understanding their needs and treating them as individuals, not just potential sales." Jake nodded, a new determination igniting within him. "I really appreciate this, Ethan. I won't forget it." Ethan's gaze shifted to Sarah, who had been quietly observing the exchange. She stepped forward, her eyes shining with admiration. "That was incredible, Ethan. You showed real compassion back there." "Thank you, Sarah," Ethan replied, his heart swelling with gratitude for her presence. "It's important to foster an environment where everyone feels valued. We can all be a part of that change." "Absolutely," she agreed. "I think this dealership could use a transformation, starting with us. Imagine how different things could be if we all worked together to create a more inclusive culture." Ethan smiled at her enthusiasm. "I'd love to partner with you on that. You've already shown so much kindness and respect. Together, we can build a foundation that emphasizes empathy and integrity." As they spoke, Jake listened intently, feeling a growing sense of hope. The camaraderie developing between Ethan and Sarah was infectious, and he realized that he wanted to be part of this new vision. "Can I join in on this mission?" he asked, a hint of eagerness in his voice. "Of course," Ethan replied, his smile widening. "The more the merrier. We need to create a team that prioritizes relationships over commissions." In that moment, the tension that had once pervaded the dealership began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. The future was bright, and as they discussed plans for change, Ethan felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. As Ethan left the dealership that day, he glanced back at the building, feeling a newfound kinship with the people inside. He had entered as a billionaire testing the waters of humility, but he was leaving with something far more valuable, a commitment to fostering connection and understanding in a world often blinded by appearances. With Sarah and Jake by his side, he was ready to embark on this journey of transformation, armed with the lessons of empathy and integrity that had reshaped his own life. Together, they would cultivate an environment where respect and kindness flourished, proving that even in the most unlikely places, change was possible.